I'd like to welcome today's guest, Point of Rental's Senior Vice President of Global Product Management, James Morley. James, welcome to the Front Porch. I didn't welcome you yet.
Appreciate it, Brian. Thanks for having me here.
Welcome to the Front Porch with Brian Beaudry.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Who are you? Where are you from? And I've been trying to become an adequate leader. Part of that process is coming up with my own personal leadership philosophy. What is your personal leadership philosophy?
Yep. Well, as you said in the intro, I'm James Morley. I'm the head of product management here at Point of Rental. I'm originally Canadian, born there. Then through a couple different stops of having a father in the oil and gas industry, I wound up in Houston. I've spent most of my growing up time in Houston, and even though our office is headquartered here in Dallas-Fort Worth, I commute back and forth every couple of weeks, and so I'm based in the Houston area.
I'm glad it's every couple weeks, not every day. That seems like
that
too much.
that was a no-go for the initial bringing the idea of coming and working to Point of Rental to my wife. But no, it's a good balance of being able to come and get FaceTime with people, but then also getting to work with Jim Shorts half of the time, as most people enjoy from a hybrid work scenario. Leadership philosophy. So I would say that of all the leadership philosophies that I've resonated with, the one that I try to keep forefront in my mind and I think resonates the most with me is lead by example. I think that if you ask somebody to do something that you're not willing to do yourself, or if you're trying to build a team or be a part of an organization and you're asking people to do things that you're not modeling that behavior, talk is pretty cheap. They need to see you doing those things. And so that's the philosophy that I think's resonated with me the most in my career.
All right, I like it. Okay, now let's go all the way into the past.
Okay.
A little bit after you were born, probably, but well before today. So what did you want to be when you were a kid, when you first started to get that answer to the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
My first memory of answering that question, I think, is a pretty standard answer for most elementary kids. Pretty sure I wanted to be a marine biologist. First trip to the ocean or SeaWorld and seeing Shamu, I think there's a high prevalence or a high correlation of children that wanted to be a marine biologist. I don't know that anything ever came of it, but that would have been, I think, my answer through elementary school or that type of time frame. By the time I got into high school, I got introduced into technical theater, so the idea of doing lighting design as we have in the studio today, building sets and things like that. And it brought a lot of interest in my life together, entertainment, theater, not having to be on stage in the theater, but still getting to be a part of it, a certain amount of problem solving and fixing, et cetera. And so that resonated with me all through high school. And I think I would have told you up until my senior year of high school, that was the career path that I intended to get into.
So that made you give up on marine biology?
Yeah.
Real early.
Yeah, I realized, Shamu had plenty of other probably smarter people than me trying to pursue that career, and I was much better at building things, and that would probably be a better place for me.
Okay, well, also that career doesn't seem to exactly correlate with product or product management. So let's go through some of the stops that you went in between there and here. So what'd you do out of high school? It appears that you didn't maybe set up all of the stages.
No, I did get to dip my toe in the water and do it, as a gig work for a little bit. Went to university. When I graduated, like many, Longhorns in Austin that don't quite know what they want to do with their life, the big employer in that area was Dell. So I spent my first 2 years out of university working for Dell in their sales department. And so I did a lot of cold calling sales into small and medium-sized businesses that didn't have a relationship, or if any of you are familiar, at the time, Dell went through a period of what they called Dell hell. So they had treated their customers so badly that they were having customers leave them in droves, and they were really trying to turn the ship and say, we want to be a different company, et cetera. And so a lot of that experience that I had was calling into customers that had a previous relationship and trying to bring them back. And so great organization that taught a lot of skills, had a really good onboarding practice, and, many things in life relate to sales. So if you have a background in sales, you find yourself using those skills later. So that was a great first stop for me.
So your first job was like apologizing for previous people.
Yeah, sorry for what happened before. Could I sell you a server? That was, my first 2 years out of college with some degree of success. And then in 2008, most people in their employment history, if it goes that back far, have a 2008 story. Before anything, we heard any rumbles of it, I actually got the opportunity to go do some pretty cool travel, to go up to Norway, spend a couple weeks going around the Norwegian islands, et cetera. And so 2 years out of college with, nothing expected of me in life and having a savings account, I thought that was a pretty good idea. I came back, and around the time I came back to either pick up a job again at Dell or maybe go work with some other large company in a similar capacity, hiring freeze, nothing was going on, et cetera. Yeah. So I had made my way back to Houston and fell into a very small oil and gas software company. It had gone through some downturns as well. There were 3 people in the United States and maybe 2 or 3 in eastern Ukraine in Kyiv doing the actual software development. So I fell into that company for a while. Ended up spending 9 years working there. So when I started such a small company, there were no job titles. You just did whatever you had to do to make everything work. Yeah. I was James, answered the phone, did things in the background, helped with the developers, did a certain amount of sales, et cetera. We were able to grow that business pretty significantly to the point that 9 years later, I was the chief operating officer of still a very small business, but running the day-to-day operations. And then that business became acquired by a larger oil and gas software company, which is where I spent the last 4.5 years of my professional life. Building out the company had big software solutions that were sold kind of on-prem to enterprise customers. Part of the reason that they acquired us was not just that we were a fit for their portfolio for where they wanted to go, but also they wanted to start to build out a different customer solution, a more modern, based around software as a service. And so I started the first customer success group at that company about how we would have an intentional customer experience for those. That also took on a product management aspect, almost building out a business unit within that group before eventually focusing down just to product management. And then Point of Rental came along.
Okay, so I know I need to get into the product management part and the business side of things, but you did mention, like, I just had this opportunity to go to Norway. Like, what do you mean? Like, you technically always have the opportunity to go somewhere for a couple weeks if you want, but that seems very specific.
Well, this one was handed to me on a silver platter, so it was really hard to say no. And so my parents do a lot of traveling. Photography is a big hobby. I realized as I'm an adult now, looking back on my childhood, that my father, who was a geologist by training, all of our family vacations were about staring at interesting rocks. And so never went to Disney World, never went to Disneyland as a kid. Instead, we would pack up in the family minivan or the Suburban, and we'd head out to Castle Rock or Zion or the Grand Canyon or Lake Powell. And again, looking back as an adult, the common theme was interesting rocks all over the place. And so right around the time, a couple years out of college, my father had planned to go up to Svalbard or Longyearbyen, which is on the island of Svalbard in upper Norway, and he was going to be on this cruise with my mom and my grandparents. My grandparents had actually honeymooned in Norway, and he wanted to take them back after so many years. My grandparents said, "Oh, that's a very thoughtful gesture, but we don't want to go spend 4 weeks on a ship going around the islands, crossing the Bering Strait, et cetera." And so he came to my brother and I and said, "Well, because I've got these 2 non-refundable tickets, would you like to go?" So that's how that came to be, and no regrets. But I don't know if I would have gotten that if the tickets were refundable.
That's fair. Yeah, that is definitely one of those where it's like, okay, twist my arm. I guess,
right.
I guess I'll go. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk more about getting into the business side of software and dealing with SaaS. How is that kind of translated to what you do here at Point of Rental?
I think a lot of things, I was in a very small business. There were, for a long time, no clear job descriptions, roles. You did whatever you needed to do. As we grew, we got, more defined job descriptions and roles, and I continued to run the operations of the day-to-day of the entire business. And I think the common theme that we had was we wanted to have a fantastic customer experience. Our differentiator was not just our technology, but how we offered our support model, how we offered this partnership experience with our customers where, we would proactively call them and say, what are the challenges that you have coming up? What's your business going to be going forward? How do we help make our software work best for you? And that got a lot of loyalty with customers, even when in some cases the product didn't have all of the bells and whistles that they might need. They were more patient with us versus saying, I'm going to go look at a competitor, because of that customer experience that we design. So that philosophy of engaging with customers, having a great customer experience is one that I took, helping run a small business. When I then got moved into a larger business that had much more rigid swim lanes of what your job had to be, I naturally came over to product because as much as everything you're trying to do in sales, in support, et cetera, is helping your customers, in my view, the role of product is to understand from our customers in market what the largest problems that they have is, and what could we do to solve that in a way that has them adopt our software. And so that means not only do you get to spend time with customers, build those relationships, et cetera, but you actually have the ability to build something that brings them meaning and value. And so that really was all right, you've got to pick a swim lane. Product is the one that you get the most control of actually solving customers' problems. And so that's kind of what led my journey that direction.
Yeah, it seems like a good direction to go in if you're wanting to solve people's problems. And I noticed that you've implemented a few of those things here at Point of Rental. I know there are a bunch of advisory boards and a whole bunch of other things. I don't know all of them though. So what are all of the things that you've implemented to try to?
So what we're trying to do is make sure that the product team brings the company along. So we're engaging with our stakeholders internally, but also that when we say we should build X or fix Y or do something like that, that's informed by the stakeholders we have internally, but heavily informed by our customers. There's no one size fits all for how you engage with our customers. They're of different sizes. They're in different segments. Some want to interact with you digitally. They love the platform You Innovate, where they go submit an idea. They can comment on it. They can upvote it. Some say, I don't have time to go log into a platform and search around and do that. I'd like somebody to come sit down with me. So we have product managers that go out to locations, sit down with customers, have a conversation with them. We also have this idea of customer advisory boards where we'll bring customers together in different geographies and different segments. We do it virtually. We're going to have the first in-person version of it coming up in October, where we'll stack rank ideas. We'll talk to them about it. We'll say, okay, when you say we'd like to have X mobile feature, what does that really mean and what problem is it solving? And it may mean that when they say go add a checkbox here, we in fact realize that no, that doesn't solve the problem. The better way to solve the problem is this. And so we want to be collaborative in that conversation with them. So the customer advisory boards allows us to do that, to have long format conversations back and forth with those customers. We also use a tool called AHA to do what's called empathy sessions. So again, our customers are running their business all day and out. Sometimes with their best intentions, they can't log into a 1 o'clock call because something changes for their business. So instead, they have the ability to go log in, watch a short video of a concept or a prototype, leave a comment, interact with customers there. We have business analysts that will call out to them, talk them through things. We're also investing in tools within the software so that they can leave comments and suggestions or even mark, this screen gives me a lot of trouble. And so that's about opening up a lot of different channels to get feedback, because we don't want, it's this idea of the one squeaky wheel. We don't want one place that we're only getting feedback from and ignoring the rest of the car in that analogy.
Yeah, I definitely like, especially like the comparison between You Innovate and like these more robust things. Obviously, when you're making a suggestion, you're just thinking of like the quickest thing, but it's not necessarily like the full thing that needs to be done to actually take care of the issue. So.
Right. The more data points we have, the more points of impact we can make better, more balanced decisions rather than single point of feedback. We're 6 months into building something and realize that it's not for the greater good of our customers.
Okay. So how did you find Point of Rental? You mentioned that you got here, but I don't know how you actually ended up here.
Yeah, I had a recruiter reach out to me. I was in a very good place at a company that was growing, but I'd known the elements of something that I would want if I was able to move, and Point of Rental met all of those elements. In that, I was looking for my own career development. I wanted to report into a CEO rather than run a business unit, so that I could have an impact on the entire business, not one slice of it. I had built up a skill set within an industry, and I wanted to figure out if I was lucky or if I was good, and could I take that skill set and cross industries. And so that was part of the advantage of, after a certain amount of time, you become an expert in that industry. Could I be an expert in the discipline of product management and take that to a different industry? And then I really wanted to go to a company that had values more than what they just put on the conference room wall, that was mission-led, that really spoke to the culture of who we intend to be. And even if that was aspirational and we're still trying to get there, that I could be a part of that growth of the company. And pretty much from the very first conversation I had with the recruiter and then speaking to our CEO, Wayne, all three of those boxes were checked. And so I was very excited about the opportunity from the outset of being reached out to from a recruiter.
All right, good. And you haven't left yet. So
I haven't left yet.
Seems
no.
like we're still up there. So that's good.
All those things remain true this amount of time in.
Good, because it also seems like you're like a positive version of a Trojan horse, where you've brought in a bunch of other people from your previous stations. And how many people have you brought over, and what are you selling them on when you're telling them to come here?
Well, I've done a fair amount of hiring since I've been here, but I have 3 that have specifically come over from my last company, although one of them has been actually with me since that small business back before the other one. I would say that, one of Point of Rental's core strengths is we have a huge amount of industry expertise. We have people walking these halls with decades of experience in the rental industry. They know our products, they know our segments. And so we've got a really strong team with that core industry experience in our products. I've had the fortune to work with some really great people that bring other skill sets, and specifically that next stage of growth that we're in right now between more customers, bigger, more complex problems. How do we take this intentional customer experience that we want to deliver, but we want to deliver it at scale from a product, from a support, from an expense. Also, as the business gets bigger, it gets more complex, and we want to be able to know how we're working in that business before something sneaks up on us. And so those are some of the individuals that have seen that level of growth before. They have experience with companies of this size and larger, and so they're able to come in and add catalysts to the knowledge that we already have with the team members that we have. And so, I've been fortunate to be able to attract a few that want to continue the journey with me. And, depending on budgets and hiring, I'd love to, any of you out there, I'd love to chat with you in the future.
All right. Always be recruiting. Okay. So it sounds like you kind of use the same like mental process for both of these, but I was going to say, which comes more naturally to you, identifying good fits for people in roles, or identifying how to grow / enhance a product?
So many things are linked, right? In product management, the first thing that you're trying to do is what's the problem you're trying to solve, and is that a meaningful problem? And I think that with growth and with hiring, et cetera, you need to know what's the problem you're trying to solve, then go figure out, is that a shift of existing roles? Is that an org? Is that a expanded set of responsibilities? Or, when you find that person, or if you go find that person, here's the problem you're trying to solve. Because one of the core things I would say across Point of Rental team members that were here before I got here, those that we've hired, is we're all problem solvers. Everybody likes to latch on to a great problem. And so I think you have to start with that in order to even be able to attract somebody who might be the right role for an expanded team.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things I notice as I come across all these like new people that I'm introducing. Like, what attracted you to the position? I like to solve problems.
Yeah,
and it's like no matter what part of the company they're in, that seems to be a big thing that they like.
And part of what I tell people in any kind of conversation I said is, there are companies that you can go to that you can log in with your employee ID, and from 8 to 5 or whatever your hours are, there's very prescriptive job description. Do these things, check these boxes, et cetera. Go home and be fine with it. And then there are companies like us that are growing, and there are opportunities and challenges with those growth. And if you view it as, oh my gosh, all of these things are changing, they're shifting, I get brought new responsibilities, and that drains and takes from you, this is not the place to be. But if that excites you, I get to be a part of something great that's growing, I get to see my fingerprints on a business that's changing, and I can say, look at that thing we've done for the customer, look at that new program we had, I had a hand in building that from the outset. Those are those common problem solver type people that I think we're bringing to Point of Rental.
All right. Now that sounds like it might lead into this next one, and it might be your favorite thing about this role. But what is your favorite thing about your current role?
I think it's building a great team. I always measure myself in the performance of my team. I want to see everything do well and see my team do well, see my team solving problems, taking the role that I think they should have in the organization, which is, let's build something once and have it affect 1,000 customers rather than, one great idea that might have a much smaller impact. So I think between building the team, being part of a company that is growing, that is experiencing the challenges you would expect at this level of growth, and then also, yes, having really interesting problems to solve every day when you wake up.
Okay, I like it. It seems weird to wish for more problems every day, but
I one of the things I tell my group is, if we're incredibly successful, do all the right things for ourselves, our employees, our customers, et cetera, the only thing we're signing up for is bigger, more complex problems. And so, yeah, you have to have that mindset.
all right. Cool. So before we get into your non-professional life, we need to play a game.
All right.
We're going to call it Morley or Leslie. And if you agree with the statement or if it's true, say Morley. And if you disagree with it or if it's not true, say Leslie. You understand the rules, correct?
I think I can follow you.
All right, good. And then I'll need a reason for each one of these. So Morley or Leslie, you've cheated at a board game.
Morley, true. Typically because the people that I play board games with now are between the ages of 3 and 5, and so rules are a pretty fluid concept. So they're cheating outrageously, and I'm just playing along with the tone of the game.
Okay. Morley or Leslie, if you could find out how you were going to die, you'd want to know.
Oh, Leslie. I mean, why ruin the surprise? Yeah.
That sounds, well, I guess, how will you know if you've been surprised? Morley or Leslie, you've told an outrageous lie to a child.
Morley. Seek back to the, my children I've got a pair of 3-year-old twins and a 5-year-old. I mean, the lies go from small to outrageous, depending upon whether we're talking about, spoiler alert for any children, fictional things that, Santa Claus bells around the house or on the roof on certain days, to the gold doubloons that the tooth fairy's leaving under your pillow, those types of things.
Okay. I was going to say, when you say bells that Santa's left around the house, now it makes me feel like there's Santa occasionally visiting on other days besides Christmas.
I mean, I think that if my spouse had something to do with it, Christmas would come more often and Santa would visit. But yeah, we've restricted that to once a year.
All right, good. Okay, Morley or Leslie, you prefer working from home to working at the office?
I'll answer with Morley, but with a caveat of, I would not want to go back to all in office. The flexibility of working from home, from the work-life balance, is great, but I would also not want to go to a 100% remote world. I would say that having that balance of being able to come in and see people in person and interact and build out relationships is very hard to do in our virtual world, even with all the tools that we have. You can have a meeting about a subject, you can have a collaborative, but when it's time to brainstorm or get in front of a whiteboard or do any of those activities, those are still best done in person. They can be facilitated another way. I also think about the fact that I'm very fortunate to have had time in my career where I was in person. And I think about, with junior people that I'm hiring on the team, how do I give them that same experience where you learn so much, not just about your job, but about running a business and being a part of a team, et cetera, from walking the halls and going and grabbing lunch with, a coworker that may not be in your department, in your segment. And so I appreciate the work-life balance, but I'm very much in favor of making sure that not just myself, but other team members are in enough that we can facilitate those things that are better done in person.
For sure. Yeah, and I like that you guys come in around quarterly at least, and it's nice to be able to see other people around the office.
Right.
When, sometimes I'm over here by myself over in marketing. Okay, Morley or Leslie, you have an embarrassing nickname or a nickname that you hate.
Morley, true, but will not be giving that out on the
podcast.
I
was going to say, It's a great opportunity for you to share that nickname with everyone.
Yeah, if that could stay in the small circles that it lives in, and yes, I will leave it there.
Okay, well, All right. So it's up to everyone else to find out what his hated nickname is. All right. And with that, we'll go to a break before we talk about the personal side of James Morley.
Sounds great.
Joke of the day. How do computers get drunk? They take screenshots.
So before we started recording today, you were telling me that you are an immigrant. You also mentioned that earlier in this podcast. But you came to the U.S. when you were 5-ish, and you have 3 citizenships and passports.
Mm-hmm.
So you came here from Canada. You're in the U.S. and you have U.S. citizenship. What's the third country?
My father's British, so I actually was born Canadian, and a few days later became a Canadian and British citizen. I still think that my parents thought, up until maybe a couple of years into us living in the U.S., that we might be moving back to Canada or England at some point. I think my parents are now rounding up 30-something years in Houston, and so that obviously hasn't panned out. So actually, becoming a U.S. citizen was my last citizenship that I got at 17. I didn't have to go through the process. I skirted in right a year before, but my parents went through the naturalization process, and so I got my U.S. citizenship when I was 17, and thankfully they're all friendly countries, and none of them make you give it up, so I still maintain 3 different passports.
Yeah, I was going to say that's very very nice and friendly. I don't know if they even really count as separate countries, given that they don't even make you give up your...
I keep wondering what I could do to get a 4th. You know, at some point, if that's even feasible, but I feel like that would be a very small group of people that have 4 citizenships.
Yeah, it's also just good to have options,
right?
In case I ever need to leave.
Yeah. Well, and from a point of rental standpoint, from the markets that we have offices in both of those countries, and so it just allows me to diversify. So Australia, I'm coming to visit you next year to see what it takes.
I think it takes more than just like visiting for a couple weeks, but. I mean, who knows? Has being an immigrant impacted your daily life at all? Because I'd imagine not very many people give you the old, you ain't from here, are you?
I still will say a few words, probably a little bit peculiar, but y'all has not made its way into my vernacular. I think growing up probably had the biggest impact. I went through school like every other kid, but trying to convince your English father and Canadian mother that there's a dance coming up and you need to buy this thing called a mum that sometimes has cowbells hanging off of it, and I'm going to give this to my date, was a really hard sell to convince. And so there's some, not just Americana, but Texas
I was going to say, that's a very specific Texas thing. That did not exist where I grew up.
So that existed where I grew up, trying to convince them that I think at the age of 13 or 14 that I needed a BB gun, and just getting looks of what do you need a gun for, and those types of things. So I think mostly just from convincing my parents that I needed to be an American, that was how it affected my day-to-day life. But I wouldn't say that today. I've done most of my growing up here. Some of the other culture aspects in high school, I was looking at large universities that I could go to, and looking at A&M and the University of Texas, and I just thought, they're 2 big Texas universities, and I think it was shockingly late that I realized the difference in culture and the rivalry that went on, and so those are the types of things that I think I missed out on in growing up and not having those influences.
So we already discussed how you're good at bringing people along with you after a time. It's been companies mostly, but if we do need to get out of the States for some reason, I just need to see if you can use your citizenship gaining powers to help get me. And so can you smuggle me out of the country if I need?
I think depending on the destination, I would still probably go Caribbean before I'd try to smuggle you into Canada, but we can talk.
All right, good. Another thing that you mentioned when we were talking pre-interview is that you were a Boy Scout and you did a lot of camping and traveling as a kid, including to Germany and Japan. So first of all, as an American who grew up studying a lot of World War II, I associate Germany and Japan with being Axis powers and then like great engineering, but I'm sure that's not the reason that you went to those locations. So why did you go to those 2 countries in particular?
The correlation between the 2, and I've had the fortune to go to some parts of Europe. I just came back from seeing my second trip to Normandy, so well aware of the World War II implications, but somehow the correlation that those two destinations had that in common didn't quite. So Germany was the opportunity that my high school best friend and I, we were going to travel around Europe together between high school and college. He signed up for the military, and they moved his ship out date. And so we missed that because he shipped out at the beginning of that summer. And for whatever reason at the time, I decided not to go solo. And instead, I found this through the scouting organization, a 17th century castle called Burg Rieneck, which is just outside of Würzburg in Bavaria. And I got to go be a staff member and worker there for the summer. And who doesn't like castles and the chance to live in a castle and do everything from helping facilitate weddings to reenactments to corporate retreats in beautiful part of Germany for the summer. So that was the real attraction there. Japan was being a part of kind of an exchange program and getting to go, see a part of the world that was just fantastic. We did go to Nagasaki, but we also traveled around, did a homestay, went camping, and so no correlation there. And, obviously all around the U.S. and some other travel destinations, but I guess those were the two that stuck out speaking to you
Yeah,
earlier.
I was going to say, those sound especially cool. So basically, like, the working there kind of paid for the trip?
Yeah, so working there, paid for the trip, room and board, got a small amount of allowance. It was something like 10 days on, 2 or 3 days off, and so had a home base. Was my German was horrible then, is non-existent now. But then you get 3 days, go into Berlin, go into some other part, and it's just a great way to spend a summer in between college and university, and coming back to university, having had the interesting European summer and actually ready to start doing some courses.
Yeah, dang, that sounds. I need, if I get a time machine, I'm going to need to go back in time, tell myself, sign up for Boy Scouts and do this. Okay, so why didn't you become an Eagle Scout? I'm guessing that you're not one because you said you grew up doing Boy Scouts, and I'm pretty sure every time I've met an Eagle Scout, they lead with that.
So maybe that's just an annoying habit I don't have, or maybe I need to, but I'm an Eagle Scout. I got my Eagle when I was 15, 8th grade, which is pretty early, which having that drive to do it fairly early on, there's a lot of people that call themselves life for lifers, meaning they're 18 and they aged out and they never got their Eagle. But I stayed in because I had a younger brother, and it was a big part of what my family did, camping, etc. So I stayed in after I got my Eagle, which is actually what gave me the opportunity to go do a bunch of really cool things, because I was no longer trying to earn merit badges or get my Eagle. Instead, it was, what can this do for me? And so getting to go to the big ranch in New Mexico called Philmont, I was able to do 2 hikes there over 2 different summers. I was actually worked there for a couple other summers while I was in high school, getting to go up to Colorado and, just getting to do, for those that will follow me here, the cool stuff in Boy Scouts. I realize that not everyone will agree that exists, but I would argue it.
So was like being an Eagle Scout a precondition to doing the Germany trip, or no?
No precondition. It just, for many, it just allowed me to focus on doing the interesting things that I wanted to do, whereas others that hadn't got their Eagle so early spent a lot of their time balancing, I've got to get a merit badge or some other requirement, etc. Mostly they were focused on some other thing. They were in band or in sports or those types of pieces. And I played a few sports, not very well in high school. As I said, I got into technical theater, but in the junior high years, that was my main focus outside of school. And so getting all that stuff done early gave me the chance to, go and do the fun things afterwards.
So you're getting sent away for the summer every summer. Is this, I don't know, it seems very weird for parents to just send their kids away. I know it's something that was commonly done, but as I have a daughter now, I can't imagine just like sending her away for the summer.
I don't know if that's a combination of having European parents, having parents that were just more outdoorsy themselves, or living in Houston where it's really hot in the summer and wanting to go somewhere else all summer. But I think probably from the time I entered high school, there were multiple summers where the day after school I would leave for a camp. I might come home from that camp, change clothes, and go to something else, or go work as a staff member at another camp. And it was not, I would say almost all 4 of those summers in high schools, I was gone nearly the entire time. And sometimes over Christmas breaks too, there were winter camps and things like that. but fantastic experiences and no regrets versus sitting around Houston in the summer.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like a much more fun alternative. All right. So I guess we don't need to ask you what badges you still need because you got all the badges.
I got all the ones that I needed for sure. Yeah, there might have been a few other ones and some that you were kind of forced into doing.
I was going to say, are there any that you like missed out on where you're like, oh man, I wish I'd gotten that badge? Also, is it too late? Can you get
well, you age out at 18,
when you're no longer a boy?
I mean, there's no reason you can't buy a book and go through all the things. But no, everything from there are cool things. Wilderness survival, right? So you learn some of those core survival skills. We had to build a shelter out, and the person leading it ran an exercise where we were all sitting around. He walked in and said, "An emergency happened. You're not allowed to get anything. We're taking you out into the woods." So it's like not even preparing water bottle, pocket knife if you didn't have it on you. Those were pretty memorable. All the way to basket weaving, sitting there at this camp learning to make a basket. Not nearly a skill that I use today.
Mm. Yeah, I hope you don't have to use the wilderness survival one today. All right. So there's a lot of things that I still want to get to with you, but we're running out of time, and we haven't even gotten to the 5 important questions, which tends to take quite a bit of time. So let's just get to the scuba diving, because that really sounds interesting to me. How do you decide, like, hey, I want to become a scuba diver?
So I think it was something that some friends had talked to me about. Again, in Scouts, I got the chance to do like the pool version of it. So thought that, hey, breathing underwater, this is pretty cool. Maybe it ties back to that desire from a marine biologist.
I was going to say, is that a badge, breathing underwater?
No, yeah, not the one that I got. And so, I had, I think, a friend come and tell me and say, we would all, or most of us would love if space travel became an actual thing in our lifetimes. But the closest thing you can do to it today is put on a scuba tank and go be weightless in the ocean. And then from the marine life, the calm peace that you need to have to be a good scuba diver, et cetera, it just became a really cool hobby to pick up. And from the travel bug and liking to go places, it aligns with going someplace interesting and going and seeing what's under the water at that place.
Okay, so that's your theme. Like your parents' theme was go see rocks.
Right.
And you're just like, all right, we got to go into the water.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Are you at what point are you taking your kids underwater?
I think you may have to be 15 years old to get scuba certified. And
okay,
so,
good. It sounds very scary to.
Now, I have 3 sets of snorkel equipment at home, and in the pool in the backyard, my 5-year-old and I already start snorkeling around. So she knows that 10 years from now we can try it out. So hopefully that's something that I can impress rather than force upon my children.
All right, sounds good. You're already training her to not go up faster than the bubbles.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Good. You seem like an analytical guy. Are you really organized about what you intend to see when you go on a dive throughout a trip, or is that where you go to just like clear your mind and just be zen?
Well, I think what you see is fairly outside of your control, and so there is that element of organized to a point, right? You organize the trip to get there. You get excited about where you're staying, where you're going to go, and then you set yourself up for, hey, let's go have an amazing experience. But what you see, what you experience there is, that's part of the beauty of it, is that you can't organize that.
Okay. So I'm going to name a list of things, and you let me know which things you've seen while scuba diving.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, a newt playing flute.
I have not seen that while scuba diving.
A carp playing harp.
Not seen it.
A plaice playing bass.
Nope.
A bass playing brass.
Haven't done much freshwater scuba diving, so nope.
A chub that plays the tub.
Not.
You're supposed to stop me at some point.
I figured it was a pretty exhaustive list, but no, there's been no musical instruments played by sea life in my scuba diving experience so far.
Okay, yeah. The last one was, have you seen any kind of crustacean band, hot or otherwise? Because that's my knowledge of the sea comes
is
from the Little Mermaid.
Breast?
No, Little Mermaid. Come on.
Oh, okay.
I guess you haven't entered that era of watching old Disney movies.
No, I haven't made it to that one yet.
Okay. What is something that people misunderstand about you? Yeah, I really took it in a totally different direction there.
Yeah, I would try to. I'm trying to think back on people that I've gotten to know well and what they've maybe brought me later on in our relationship that they say that they misunderstood about me? I don't have a good answer for you, Brian.
All right. Well,
Sorry.
I mean, why are we even doing this if you can't answer that one? The next one is, do you have any questions for me? You get exactly one. I get to ask all these, and you get to ask one.
Brian, you do a lot of these interviews, right? You put together these questions. You are the face of Point of Rental, whether it's our, marketing or other pieces. When you spend the time with this amount of people, how much of this is really formulaic for you, or how much of it are you saying like, there's something about this person I really want to know, and I build the interview around that? How do you approach giving interviews like this?
So for the sake of like organization and all of that, I try to keep a lot of it very similar and kind of have a format. But then I do like to have a handful of questions that are actually things that I'm interested in. I did appreciate the fact that you had like a list of things that it's like, hey, these are things that people generally find interesting. It's so much more helpful than some of these other ones. Because, it's just much easier than trying to count on myself to be able to ask good follow-up questions in the moment. It's maybe a bit of a crutch, but
Okay.
It's
Give me a second question.
fine.
So in my opinion, you do something that for many people might be their nightmare, right? You get up and you're the face of the organization. Lots of people talk about how they hate the sound of their own voice. And in many ways, you're on videos and you don't have the live audience to interact with or anything like that. For somebody that might not like spending time in front of cameras, in front of an audience or something, and someone that's obviously mastered it in their career, what would you advise on somebody going down that journey for how they can be better in front of an audience?
I think that the main thing that helped me as far as like being in front of an actual audience, because I had to do that at industry panel last year, it's really just kind of focusing in on the person that you're talking to. It's much easier. I also am not comfortable in front of a camera, and part of the whole experience of doing this has been kind of building my comfort level. We started this as an audio only thing, and then Scott wanted to do video, and he is much more of a like YouTube generation type.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable on video person.
Yeah.
So it's something that just focus on the person that you're talking to and try to forget that there's cameras there.
Yeah. It resonates with me. Like, I might be stealing a question from you later on, but one of those kind of get to know you questions is always like, what is your biggest fear? And for me, I know I'm just, yeah. Oh, for me, there's a thing called lassophobia, which is a fear of depths and unknown. And so you might say, well, hold on, James, we just talked about all the scuba diving and you're talking about being afraid of being in the water. That's absolutely what it is. And I think that's part of what it is. It's that rational side of your brain saying like, it's fine. You're going there. Jaws is not going to be right below the surface. There won't be any great white, but you have that response of the increased heart rate, et cetera. And then you get down there and you have such a great experience. But every single time I get into the water, it freaks and so sometimes it's like you just have to find that challenge, whether it's getting in front of people or getting in the water, et cetera. I think that's what grows you as a person, whether it's in the career or personally.
Yeah. The other thing is like, I don't think anyone actually cares that much that I'm going to get fired or like anyone's going to yell at me over anything that I'm saying here. So it's not
that sounds like a
as
challenge.
big as things. Yeah, I've come close to saying things that might get me in actual trouble, but I managed to avoid that. By the way, you're not doing anything crazy like cave diving, are you, when you're doing scuba diving?
So I've done cenotes and down in Acamal outside of Mexico. So it's not technically a cave because 100, 200 feet away you could see where you would get out. But I think that the definition of cave diving is if there's an overhang, right? If you can't just pull your regulator and go out, and you definitely can't do that. I would say that's in my top 5. Like one of the coolest things that I've ever done is because the cenotes don't have any fish or anything, so it really is like being in space. Like you can't see the water; you just feel like you're going around in a big cave. So that was super cool. But I haven't done any like squeeze into tight spaces. Okay. Obviously, if you look at my physique, that's not something I'm planning to do.
I just want to make sure that you're avoiding the ones where where I've seen like the signs where it's like, don't go here.
Yeah,
it's like, don't do that, James. We like you around here. Before we get into the 5 important questions, I need to get a list of your top 5 merit badges that you've earned. So we need to start at 5 and go to 1.
5 and go to 1.
Yeah. So number 5.
I think camping, number 5.
Number 4.
hiking, shotgun shooting,
Okay.
riflery, wilderness survival.
Okay, so
Be
you
the
did get
top five.
the wilderness survival. Did you get stuck without your pocket knife or anything like that?
I remember not needing a pocket knife. I think I found some like fronds that I could weave together to put it, because it actually did rain on us that night that we were out there. And some of the guys I was with were pretty miserable, and I remember being cold, but not like miserably wet that night. So I think I was pretty effective for that one night of wilderness survival.
All right, good. Well, that one sounds, I won't say like fun, but it sounds like a challenge.
Yes, yeah.
All right.
So some of our colleagues here and I, we talk about there's different levels of fun. So there's level 1 fun, which is fun you know that you're having while you're having it. And then level 2 fun, which might be hiking up the side of it, or where you talk about it constantly afterwards and you look back on it and you're like, actually, we were having the time of our lives. But while you're doing it, you're not having fun. That's level 2 fun.
Okay. I like that there's levels. I propose like some other levels of like,
Sitting on a beach, level 1 fun. I'm enjoying this while I'm doing it.
I was going to say that might be like a different, I don't know. We'll discuss levels of fun another time because I feel like we could spend a while discussing that. So let's get into the 5 important questions.
Okay.
5 important questions. 5 important questions? 5 important questions.
Number 1, what would you say is your greatest success in life?
My wife is beautiful and classy and way out of my league, and I somehow convinced her to marry me, and that is the greatest success I've had in life.
All right. Well, I won't debate you on that one. That seems necessary and probably rude. Number 2, you've already kind of stolen it from me, but what is your greatest fear? Is it?
I would say, depths, anytime, that first jump in off the dive boat and looking around and figuring out if a shark or a monster is about to eat you, that's my big fear.
Yeah, depth seems like someone that only someone who scuba dives would even think of as far as a thing. Like, obviously there's heights, but no one thinks depths. All right. If you could tell first day at Point of Rental James one piece of advice, what would you tell him?
Continue to communicate. And so being a new entity at the company, wanting to make an impact, but making sure that I bring my stakeholders along with me. And there's some version of, what I've read about people in politics or those that communicate for a living of, when you're tired of saying it, say it 3 times more, and then maybe you've probably communicated it. And I think that's what I would remind myself at the beginning of, just because you've had the conversation with one person or a group of people doesn't mean you've communicated the message effectively.
That's probably something I should listen to because I get tired of communicating something after once. So, what is your most embarrassing moment as a pointer?
I'm a fairly clumsy person. Thankfully, they let me wear a black shirt because if it was any color other than this, I would have to go through shirts pretty quickly. I probably haven't had my most embarrassing day at Point of Rental yet.
It's something you're looking forward to.
I'm sure it's still on the horizon. I do think there was a day that I came in, had a full morning of meetings, and I just got slammed with a headache or something like that, and I had to go tell my boss, our CEO, I have to go back to my hotel room and lay down. And I went and did that for 2 hours and came back. But, obviously everybody was very gracious and accommodating. But it is somewhat, when you're still an unknown entity saying, I've got to peace out for a couple hours. And so that was, probably the most embarrassing so far that has occurred to me.
All right. Well, sorry you've been sentenced to death because needing a couple hours to lay down and rest is now a capital offense. You now get to have a permanent rest after that. What is your last meal and why?
So I think also coming to the U.S., there's a whole slew of Southern food that I didn't grow up with. That wasn't what came out of my family and put on our dinner table. So I think some combination of, a smoked Texas brisket, cornbread made from somebody who's from a couple generations of the South, macaroni and cheese where, it's been put in the oven and baked for a little while, would be up there with the last meals.
I like that you have a demand. It's like, no, this person was clearly like first generation.
No, first generation, nothing out of a box. Yeah.
Okay, so nothing to honor your Canadian or or English.
I mean, there's a lot of
backgrounds.
history between those countries and a lot to be proud of, but I think culinary, I do like a good full English breakfast, but I'm not sure if that's actually English culture or just a tourist thing. But neither one of those are, in fact, English culture is just really good at stealing other cultures' food. So yeah.
That's fair. Okay. Well, would you like any beverage with your final meal?
Probably a good whiskey.
All right. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be? And this is a like instant change type thing rather than a, constant working.
Other than, wealth and health, that would probably be in those categories.
It's fair. That's a good general wish. If you could change one thing at point of rental, what would it be?
Change one thing at point of rental. I think I have the opportunity in my position that I am trying to change a lot of things all at once.
But now you can do it in a snap.
I would like to take the feature-rich software that we have that serves a lot of customers, and a big part of what we have going on right now is modernizing it. So taking all of those features that our customers use day to day and moving it into more modern platforms. If we could get that done a little bit faster, we would appreciate it. Our customers would appreciate it.
That's true. Okay, what is your spirit spice?
Oh, spirit spice.
Like that you say spirit spices. So
I know.
obviously, this is a common question that everyone knows.
I'm still not quite certain what you do with seasoning salt over salt, but I feel like there's probably a world of where seasoning salt is the better answer. So I'm going to go with that.
Okay, it gives you a little extra flavor on top of the salt. I do enjoy it on French fries. Okay, tell me a secret about point of rental.
I don't know that I've been here long enough. There are rooms full of random things. Every now and then I was looking to change my desk around, and I went looking, and I found a room full of desks or a room full of Nerf guns and things like that. And so I think this office is a treasure trove of random things if you open up the right door.
That's true. Yeah, we moved into the office and then COVID hit, so we didn't really get fully situated. So that there is a bunch of random stuff around here.
But if there are other secrets, my tenure's probably too. So I would appreciate knowing any other secrets of point of rental that I should know.
Okay, what's something, whether related to our software or not, that you could teach a 3 to 5 minute class about, like on video?
I think using different tools like OneNote, et cetera, to stay organized, and using Google Tasks. I think that what I find interesting and surprising is that for some of the really high-level people that I either interview or hire that, have great brains to solve problems, et cetera, how much some kind of basic task management and organization can be lacking. And so I may not be an expert in it, but I think that's one of the things that just by necessity I have to do to survive.
Okay. And then the natural follow-up is, what is something that you'd be excited to teach a 3 to 5 minute class about?
I think you can always engage me, in different levels of productivity suites, which is probably pretty boring for most others, or interesting places to travel, and whether it's scuba diving or hiking, et cetera. And so a 3 to 5 minute class on that.
All right, those sound entertaining, and maybe we'll need to create some of those in the future. Okay, well, thank you, James, for chatting today. We're done with our hour, and thank you to anyone that made it to this point with us. We'll keep the porch light burning for you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Brian.